Today was supposed to be the most special day of my life, my 16th birthday. The day I had been planning for months, dreaming about for years. I had saved every penny from my part-time job at the local grocery store, worked extra hours on weekends, and even sold some of my old video games just to make sure everything would be perfect. You see, I've never been the popular kid, never been the one everyone wanted to hang out with. My name is Marcus, and if I'm being honest, I've always been what people call the weird kid. You know the type, too skinny, glasses held together with tape, clothes that never quite fit right because they came from the thrift store. My mom does her best, working 2 jobs just to keep our small apartment. But there's never much left over for the brand name clothes or the latest gadgets that seem to matter so much to everyone else. But this birthday was going to be different. This was going to be my moment to finally fit in, to show everyone that I could throw a party just as good as anyone else's. I spent weeks planning every detail. I rented the community center down the street, the same one where all the cool kids had their parties. I ordered pizza from Tony's, the expensive place that everyone always talked about. I even managed to get a DJ setup borrowed from my neighbor's cousin. The invitations went out 3 weeks early. Bright, colorful cards that I designed myself and printed at the library. Marcus's Sweet 16 Bash, they read, with all the details carefully written in my best handwriting. I handed them out personally to everyone in my grade. 37 invitations in total. I counted them twice to make sure I didn't miss anyone. This is going to be awesome, man, I told my reflection in the bathroom mirror that morning, trying to convince myself as much as anyone. Everyone's going to see that you're not just the quiet kid who sits in the back of math class. I arrived at the community center 2 hours early, my mom dropping me off with a concerned look that she tried to hide behind a forced smile. "Have fun, sweetie," she said, kissing my forehead. "I'll pick you up at 10, okay?" I could see the worry in her eyes, but I was too excited to pay much attention to it. The decorations took me an hour to set up. Streamers in my school colors, balloons tied to every chair, and a banner that read, "Happy Sweet 16 Marcus," in letters I had painstakingly cut out by hand. The pizza arrived right on time, filling the room with that amazing smell that always made my mouth water. The DJ equipment hummed to life, and I spent 30 minutes creating the perfect playlist. A mix of everyone's favorite songs that I had researched by listening to conversations in the hallways. 6 o'clock came and went. The official start time on the invitations. I stood by the door, straightening my tie for the 100th time, watching the parking lot through the window. Maybe people were just running late. That happens sometimes, right? By 6:30, I was starting to pace. I checked my phone. No messages, no calls. Maybe I had gotten the time wrong on the invitations. I pulled out the extra one I had kept and read it again. No, 6 o'clock was right. 7 o'clock arrived with nothing but the sound of my own footsteps echoing in the empty room. The pizza was getting cold, and I had already eaten 3 pieces just to have something to do with my hands. The DJ equipment played my carefully crafted playlist to an audience of empty chairs and deflated expectations. I tried calling a few people. Jake from my English class, straight to voicemail. Sarah, who had smiled when I gave her the invitation. No answer. Even Tommy, who I thought was actually becoming a friend after we got paired up for a science project. Nothing. 8 o'clock came and went. And that's when the terrible truth started to sink in. They weren't coming. None of them were coming. This wasn't about being late or forgetting or having other plans. This was about the fact that nobody actually wanted to spend their Saturday night at Marcus the Weird Kid's birthday party. I sat down in one of the decorated chairs, surrounded by enough food for 40 people and decorations that suddenly seemed childish and desperate. The silence was deafening, broken only by the playlist that had seemed so perfect just hours before, but now felt like a cruel soundtrack to my humiliation. The worst part wasn't even the loneliness. It was the realization that I had been fooling myself all along. All those smiles when I handed out the invitations, all those sounds cool responses, they had been fake. Polite lies to avoid hurting my feelings in the moment, without any regard for how much worse it would hurt when I found myself completely alone on what was supposed to be the most important night of my teenage life. I thought about calling my mom to come pick me up early, but I couldn't bear the thought of explaining why the party had ended before it even began. So I sat there, in my too big suit that we had bought on sale, surrounded by the remnants of dreams that now felt impossibly naive. That's when I heard the first knock on the door. My heart jumped. Maybe someone had actually come after all. Maybe I had been wrong about everything, and people were just really, really late. I practically ran to the door, my dress shoes sliding slightly on the polished floor of the community center. But when I opened it, my heart sank even further than I thought possible. It wasn't one of my classmates. It wasn't anyone from school at all. Standing there were three kids I recognized from the neighborhood. Tommy's little brother Jake, who was maybe 12, and two of his friends whose names I didn't even know. "Hey," Jake said, looking awkward and shuffling his feet. "Tommy sent us. He said there was free pizza here?" Free pizza. That's what my 16th birthday party had been reduced to. A place where kids came not to celebrate with me, but to grab some free food, because word had gotten around that the weird kid was desperate enough to feed anyone who showed up. "Yeah," I managed to say, my voice cracking slightly. There's plenty of pizza." The three 12-year-olds wandered in, and I watched them load up paper plates with slices, barely acknowledging the decorations or the music, or the fact that this was supposed to be a birthday party. They found a corner table and sat down, talking among themselves about some video game I'd never heard of. At least the room wasn't completely empty anymore, I told myself. At least there were voices other than my own, echoing off the walls. But somehow, having these kids there, kids who weren't even my friends, who were only there for the food, made everything feel worse. It highlighted just how pathetic the whole situation really was. Around 8:30, a few more people trickled in. Mrs. Henderson from down the hall in our apartment building, who had always been kind to me when I carried her groceries. She stayed for about 10 minutes, complimented the decorations, and left with an apologetic smile about having to get home to her cats. Then came Mr. Rodriguez, the janitor from my school. I was surprised to see him. I had never given him an invitation, but somehow he had heard about the party. He was a quiet man who had always nodded at me in the hallways, and seeing him there, in his weekend clothes instead of his work uniform, actually brought tears to my eyes. "Happy birthday, Marcus," he said in his heavily accented English, shaking my hand formally. 16 is important year, yes? You becoming a man." He stayed longer than Mrs. Henderson, actually sitting down and asking me about school, about my plans for the future. For a few minutes I almost forgot how humiliated I felt. Here was an adult who was treating me with genuine respect, who seemed to actually care about what I had to say. But even Mr. Rodriguez had to leave eventually, and by 9 o'clock it was just me and the three 12-year-olds who had finished the pizza and were now arguing about whether they should leave or stick around to see if there was cake. I hadn't even thought about cake. In all my planning, I had focused so much on making everything perfect for my classmates that I had forgotten to get myself a birthday cake. What kind of birthday party doesn't have a birthday cake? The kind thrown by someone so desperate for acceptance that he forgot the most basic elements of celebrating his own life. "Is there gonna be cake?" Jake asked, as if reading my thoughts. "No," I said quietly. I forgot to get one." The three kids exchanged glances, and I could see them silently communicating their decision to leave. Within 5 minutes, they were gone, leaving me alone again with enough leftover pizza to feed me for a week, and decorations that now seemed to mock me with their cheerful colors. I started cleaning up, taking down the streamers and deflating the balloons, each pop echoing through the empty room like a gunshot. The banner with my name on it felt especially humiliating now, evidence of how much hope I had invested in this disaster. That's when I heard car doors slamming outside. Multiple car doors. My heart started racing again, but this time with dread rather than hope. Who could be arriving at 9:15 at night? Had word gotten around school about my pathetic party? Were people coming to see the aftermath, to laugh at the decorations and the leftover food? I peeked out the window and felt my stomach drop. There were cars in the parking lot. Nice cars. Not the beat-up vehicles that most people in my neighborhood drove, but actual nice cars with shiny paint and all their parts intact. And people were getting out of them. Adults in suits. Adults who looked important, official. Adults who definitely did not belong at a 16-year-old's birthday party in a rundown community center. I watched through the window as they gathered near the entrance, talking among themselves in low voices. One of them, a woman in a navy blue suit, was holding what looked like a folder. Another man was carrying something wrapped in elegant paper that was definitely not a casual gift. My mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Had I somehow broken rules by using the community center? Was I in trouble for the music being too loud, even though no one had been here to hear it? Had my mom somehow not paid the rental fee, and these were people coming to kick me out? The knock on the door came again, but this time it was different. Firm, official, the kind of knock that meant business. I looked down at myself, still in my too big suit, still wearing the party hat I had forgotten to take off, still surrounded by the evidence of my social failure. Whatever these adults wanted, they were going to see me at my absolute lowest point. Taking a deep breath that did nothing to calm my racing heart, I walked to the door and opened it. Standing there was the last person I ever expected to see at my birthday party. The last person I ever expected to see anywhere, really. A man whose face I recognized from billboards around town, from the newspaper, from the local news broadcasts my mom sometimes watched. It was Mayor Davidson, the actual mayor of our city, standing at the door of my failed birthday party, wearing an expensive-looking suit and holding what appeared to be an official proclamation. "Marcus Johnson?" he asked, and even his voice sounded important. The kind of voice that belonged in city council meetings and ribbon-cutting ceremonies, not in conversation with awkward teenagers in empty community centers. I nodded, unable to speak, unable to process what was happening. Behind the mayor, I could see other official-looking people, including a woman with a camera and a man with what looked like a microphone. "May we come in?" the mayor asked. "We have something very important to discuss with you." I stepped aside, my legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. The mayor walked in, followed by what I now realized was an entire entourage. There was the woman with the camera, the man with the microphone, someone carrying what looked like a fancy certificate, and two other people in suits who looked like they belonged in a government building. They all stopped and looked around the community center, at the half-deflated balloons, the leftover pizza boxes, the banner with my name still hanging crookedly from where I had started to take it down. I wanted to disappear into the floor. Of all the moments for important people to see me, it had to be at the absolute rock bottom of my social existence. "I apologize for the intrusion," Mayor Davidson said, his voice kind but formal. "We tried calling your home, but there was no answer. Your mother gave us this address when we spoke with her earlier." My mother? When had my mother spoken to the mayor? My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what was happening. Had I done something wrong? Was I in some kind of trouble that required the mayor himself to come find me? "Marcus," the mayor continued, "what I'm about to tell you might come as quite a shock. 3 weeks ago, our city received a very unusual inquiry from the state education department. They had been conducting a review of standardized test scores from across the region, looking for statistical anomalies that might indicate either cheating or exceptional performance." He paused, and I realized everyone in the room was looking at me. The woman with the camera had started taking pictures, and the man with the microphone was recording everything. "Your name came up, Marcus, because your test scores over the past 3 years have been, well, they've been extraordinary. Not just high, we see high scores regularly, but consistently perfect across every subject, every year, in ways that our statisticians initially flagged as impossible." Perfect? That couldn't be right. I was just Marcus, the weird kid who sat in the back of class and barely spoke unless called on. I did my homework and studied for tests, sure, but I certainly wasn't some kind of genius. "When they investigated further," the mayor went on, "they discovered that you have achieved something that has never been recorded in the history of our state's educational system. You have scored 100% on every single standardized test you have ever taken. Every math section, every reading comprehension, every science assessment, every social studies exam. A perfect score, every single time, for 3 consecutive years." The room seemed to spin around me. The people with the cameras and microphones were documenting everything, and I still couldn't understand why this mattered enough for the mayor to be here, in person, at my disastrous birthday party. "Marcus," the mayor said, "do you understand what this means? In a state with over 2 million students across hundreds of school districts, you are the only student ever, to achieve this level of consistent, perfect performance. The state education board has never seen anything like it." I found my voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. But I'm not special. I'm just me. I study hard, but I'm not smart like that. I can't be." One of the other officials stepped forward, a woman with kind eyes who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Martinez from the State Education Department. "Marcus, we've spent weeks verifying these results, having them independently reviewed, checking for any possible errors. There are no errors. Your academic performance represents a statistical impossibility that has never been achieved by any student in our state's recorded history. You are, quite literally, a once-in-a-generation academic phenomenon." The mayor smiled and gestured to the man carrying the wrapped gift. "Which brings us to why we're here tonight, on your 16th birthday. The state of California, in recognition of your unprecedented academic achievement, has awarded you a full scholarship to any university in the state system, including all fees, books, and living expenses for 4 years." He handed me the wrapped package, and with shaking hands, I opened it. Inside was an official certificate with gold seals and signatures, declaring me the recipient of the California Academic Excellence Scholarship, something I had never heard of because, as Dr. Martinez explained, it had been created specifically for me. But there's more, the mayor continued. The University of California has been following your case, and they have extended an offer for you to enter their accelerated program next fall, which would allow you to complete your undergraduate degree in 2 years and move directly into graduate studies. At 16, Marcus, you're being offered opportunities that most students could only dream of. I looked around the room at all these important people, at the cameras documenting this moment, at the official documents with my name on them, and I still couldn't quite believe it was real. This morning I had been the lonely kid that nobody wanted to hang out with. Tonight, I was apparently some kind of academic prodigy that the state government wanted to celebrate. The local news station is here, the mayor said, gesturing to the people with the camera and microphone, because tomorrow morning, your story is going to be the lead story on every news program in the state. The boy who achieved the impossible, who showed that excellence can come from anywhere, from anyone. Dr. Martinez stepped forward again. Marcus, we've also been in contact with your school, your principal, your teachers. They had no idea. You never drew attention to yourself, never made a fuss about your performance. You just quietly, consistently achieved perfection. That kind of humility, combined with your unprecedented ability, is exactly the kind of story that gives people hope. The woman with the camera, who I now realized was a reporter, asked if she could interview me for the morning news. The mayor asked if I would be willing to attend a ceremony at City Hall next week, where I would receive official recognition from both the city and the state. And as I stood there, surrounded by all these people who suddenly wanted to celebrate me, I thought about my classmates who hadn't come to my party. I thought about how alone I had felt just an hour ago, taking down decorations and wondering if anyone would ever see me as worth their time. Tomorrow, when the news story aired, they would all know. Everyone who had dismissed me, everyone who had ignored my invitation, everyone who had written me off as just the weird quiet kid. They would all see that they had missed the birthday party of the most academically gifted student in the state's history. But as the mayor shook my hand and the reporter prepared her questions, I realized something that surprised me. I didn't feel angry at my classmates anymore. I didn't feel the need for revenge or vindication. I felt something much better than that. I felt proud of who I had always been, even when no one else could see it.